morning and welcome to Roadside History. Today's Memorial Day and I'm on the road trying to enjoy some history. I'm driving through a small Utah town. The name of the town is called Leeds. And the town of Leeds is famous because it houses the only remaining CCC camp in the state of Utah. Well, what's a CCC camp, you might ask? Well, in 1929, the United States suffered a stock market crash which led to the Great Depression. President Hoover found himself out of office in 1932, being replaced by a New Yorker by the name of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR for short. When FDR became the president, his plan was called the New Deal Plan. And under this plan, he was going to create a number of government entities that would help employ people and put them to work. For example, he created the Works Progress Administration, the WPA. He also created the Social Security Administration, which is still around today. That's known as the SSA. One of the entities that he created that's no longer working today is something called the Civilian Conservation Corps, also known as the CCC. The CCC was a program that put unemployed 18 to 25-year-old young men, as well as veterans, to work, helping to improve federal land as well as state lands. All throughout the United States, you can find the effects of the CCC. Different bridges were built, maybe trails or roads, flood control. There's a number of things that these people built. Well, today, I'm going to take you to the only surviving CCC camp in the state of Utah, here in Leeds. Join me as we travel on Roadside History and learn more about this great country. We're here in the infirmary, one of the 4 buildings that are here at the local CCC camp here in Leeds, Utah. Interestingly enough, the buildings were most oftentimes temporary buildings. The U.S. Army was placed in charge of creating and constructing these buildings, but the Leeds camp is still around today. It had concrete floors, and you can see wooden rafters as I show you what the roof looks like. And the buildings themselves were able to withstand time because these weren't temporary buildings made out of wood, having wood exteriors. These were buildings that here in Leeds were fashioned from stone. In fact, they would take a lot of the stone from the old silver mine out in Silver Reef, which is also a historic area, and they would create these buildings. What you're looking here is the dispensary. Sorry, I can't speak. This is where oftentimes people would come to pick up their paychecks. And understanding a little bit about history, I mentioned earlier that this was 18 to 25-year-old young men that would come and work for the CCC. And one of the things that I failed to mention is how they got compensated. As we come inside this building here, they were compensated $30 a month for their work. 25 of that had to go back to their families. And in order to get a job with the CCC, you had to have either 3 or 4 dependents at home. The money that you got, $5, obviously didn't go a long way, but in those days, that was a decent wage considering the times of the Depression. The $25 went home to your parents or to family members who were at home so that they could buy the things that they needed and help stimulate the economy, help get money circulating again. Anyway, this is a dispensary where funds would be distributed. Again, you can see wooden rafters, concrete floor, and it looks to be like concrete walls. So you can see the stone that was used to construct this building. You can see how the rafters kind of come right down on the backside, right to the hillside. But the stones that were used, again, they came from Silver Reef, which is a historic silver mining area where they actually found silver veins coming out of sandstone, which is unheard of. And in another episode, you're going to learn a little bit more about Silver Reef. This area here is the blacksmith shop. And it's perfectly marked. Very well preserved. Again, the stone, repurposed the stone, which is just ingenious. Now, what you can hear behind me is Interstate 15. When this camp was built, Interstate 15 wasn't here at all. In fact, I have a picture that you'll see right here on your screen, and this picture shows you what it looked like before Interstate 15 came in. But let me kind of walk you in the blacksmith shop. More or less a storage nowadays. There were about 200 young men that were housed at this site, and they helped build some pretty incredible things. One of the things that they helped build was the Pine Valley Campground. The road up, excuse me, not the Pine Valley Campground, but the Oak Grove Campground. In fact, if you follow the road up to Oak Grove is located in the mountains directly to the north of where I'm standing. But they built the road up there as well as the bridges, and then the campground. They also built the Sheep's Corral over by Sheep's Bridge near Virgin, Utah, which I'll take you to later in this video. Again, here's the headmaster's quarters. Again, looking at the stairs heading up to the officers' quarters and around the area. You can imagine this is such a beautiful area, and if you were new to the area and you were a young man, you might not want to leave. In fact, some people didn't. They would marry local girls and they would stay in the area and raise their children. Again, coming up on the back side of the dispensary, you can see that the gables, the roof, comes right down almost to the ground level on the hillside, and then this is what it looks like as you work your way down. I mentioned a little bit ago that the CCC built lots of public works projects, and one of the projects they built all throughout this area in southern Utah were these corrals. They were cattle corrals. The area that we're at now was a big area for cattle as well as sheep. Most of the corrals were built to accommodate one or the other, but this corral located near Virgin, Utah accommodated both sheep and cattle, and I'll show you how you can see that here in just a minute. But you can see this is what remains of this corral. It's a large corral. As you can imagine, there was a number of sheep in this area. In fact, what you can see here is you see two outer walls, and let me explain what these were for. These are holding pens up above. You can see those are the holding pens, more holding pens. But what you see here with these two outer walls is really interesting, and you probably wouldn't even notice if you were coming by what this was for. The shorter wall that you see right down here was for sheep, and part of the exterior wall is no longer there. But the sheep obviously are a lot smaller than cattle, and so the cattlemen, the sheep herders, as they would run them through, the shorter wall, they could help keep the sheep moving along. The higher wall that you see behind that, and that you see right here running into the chute, the higher wall was for cattle, obviously, because they're much larger, and if you had a smaller wall, they'd hop right over it, but with a larger wall, they couldn't do that. Again, one of the only corrals in this area that was built and designed to accommodate both sheep and cattle, and again, built by the CCC, just another one of the CCC projects.